going on. But three things come to mind to me immediately. Number one, once again, Ukrainian armed forces have managed to launch a surprise attack in an area where you would think that Russia would be able to see and know everything that was going on because of the number of drones that they have, the fact that they have been fighting around the edges of the Kursk bridgehead for almost 7 months now, and that they were surprised by another attack. That tells me that Ukrainian competence on maintaining security and secrecy is very high level, and also Russia's ability to see what's going on in front of them is not what you would expect at this point in the war. The second takeaway for me is that this shows a real understanding of the operational level of warfare by the Ukrainian General Staff. By launching this attack, it continues to present dilemmas for the Russian General Staff. Do they have to pull resources now from another part of the war to address Kursk? Because obviously what they've done so far is not enough. And I've heard that Russian mill bloggers are complaining that Russia does not have adequate reserves in the region. This to me is astounding. The third takeaway, of course, is this complicates things for the Russian side if they are thinking about some sort of negotiated outcome where they get to keep what they have, because obviously Ukraine controls a significant part of the Kursk Oblast. So that's a real problem for the Kremlin as well. I am impressed with what Ukraine is accomplishing in the Kursk direction.
Also, 3,800 North Korean troops have already been killed or wounded, according to the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Do you see this deployment of the North Korean troops to Russia and Ukraine? Don't you think that this decision has turned out to become a big disaster for Vladimir Putin?
Well, it appears to me from talking to Ukrainian officers that the North Korean troops are employed by the Russians just as additional fodder, cannon fodder, that they are not bringing some special capabilities or a unique approach to anything. They are just fed into the fight. I think they're probably, of the 12,000 total North Korean troops, at least that's the unclassified reporting, they're divided into 4 brigades that are being integrated into Russian forces. So it's just more bodies being used in the same way that the Russians are. So I don't know that has done a lot to help Russia, except maybe to give them an excuse not to draft soldiers from Moscow or the St. Petersburg area. On the North Korean side, I don't know. I wonder what was the payment to North Korea for these 12,000 soldiers? Was it money? Was it oil and gas? Was it some sort of technology? I don't imagine that Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, cares too much about losing thousands of his soldiers. I wonder what he's getting in return for this, and if he will continue to do this.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is confident that U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has enough leverage over Vladimir Putin to force Russia to stop the war and agree with a ceasefire proposal. Can you imagine a scenario in which Vladimir Putin agrees with Trump's proposal on a ceasefire?
I think first and foremost, of course, it depends on President Zelensky. That's the most important voice in any talk about starting negotiations or in the actual conduct of any negotiations. President Zelensky has to be the one. Ukraine will not do what the U.S. says or what Russia says, obviously. And but to the point of your question, I think incoming U.S. President Trump has a lot more leverage over Putin now than he did 8 years ago. 8 years ago, Putin was in a very strong position politically, economically. He had the advantages, whereas Donald Trump was a brand new president, was not prepared for the office, and well, we were not in a good place. Now, 8 years later, Donald Trump shows up with a lot of experience. He inherits a very strong U.S. economy. He has the benefit of 31 allies in NATO, along with the U.S., most of whom recognize the importance of stopping Russia. So he won't have to convince them to do something. And I think President Trump, hopefully, I don't know this, but hopefully he will use that leverage to force Russia to leave or to accept some sort of an outcome that is favorable to Ukraine. I mean, he can continue to allow everything that the Biden administration was doing, plus. I mean, the system is already in place. All he has to do is say, give more, faster. Or he could use economic tools more effectively than the Biden administration did. Stop Russia from exporting oil and gas, for example, through the so-called shadow fleet out of the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea. Cut that off. And Russia is no longer able to sell oil and gas to China and India. That would, I think, have a significant impact. These are the kind of things that Trump could do.
But do you believe that it would be enough to stop Vladimir Putin?
I think Putin will keep going until he realizes he can't win. I think right now he still thinks that at some point the Trump administration will accept something less than the outcome that I think you and I both want and that Ukrainians want. Until he sees differently, I think he'll continue because casualties don't mean anything. If the economy of Russia, however, continues to go south, then by the middle or towards the end of this year, I think Putin will start to feel real pressure from inside Russia that he has not had to worry about so far. So I think that's the only thing that will make Putin stop is when he realizes he cannot win.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the war could be stopped if Ukraine would be provided with bold security guarantees from the United States. What kind of security guarantees Trump's administration could provide Ukraine with, from your perspective?
Well, of course, the only true security guarantee is NATO membership. And unfortunately, the Trump administration has not indicated that they are in favor of this. There are many or several European countries that also are not yet in favor of it. But if the U.S. were to say, no, this is important, we will clear the way, we will help, we will do all these things, then I think most European countries could be persuaded. So NATO membership is the key. Now, the fact that the Mr. Trump has not shown any support for this so far, is not a good thing. But because I don't believe he is driven by ideological or moral things, but more about power and U.S. interests, I think he could change his mind quickly if he were to see that it's in the best interest of the United States that Ukraine becomes a member of NATO. That's why I still hold out some hope that this could happen. Now, short of NATO membership, of course, having U.S. troops and other European troops, Canadian troops inside of Ukraine with real capability, that would be helpful. But they would have to have a real mission. They would have to have all the necessary things like air and missile defense, counter drone capabilities. What would they be there for? I think this is the kind of thing that would help, but it would not have the same security guarantee that, say, obviously NATO membership would have.
And what is your assessment of the Kit Kellogg's plan on freezing the front lines and also deploying European peacekeeping forces